Right, welcome. Um, I am going to try and make this video as comprehensive as I can. I want to talk about setting up FaceTrackNoIR. Basically, I'm doing it for Elite Dangerous because that's what I'm playing. But with the information that I provide in this video, I am sure that you can also set up whatever you are playing. Okay, so when you I'll talk about what I'm going to say first, and also what I'm not going to say. I've seen many videos on setting up FaceTrackNoIR, and none of them, or not, well, most of them don't talk about setting up the curves and setting up the program so that it does just the thing that you want it to do. The first time I downloaded it and I tried it, it didn't work for me. I wasn't satisfied at all. Basically, the goal is to play Elite Dangerous and have my character inside the game look around the cockpit, matching the movements of my head. Now, there are many solutions for this. One of them is TrackIR. Which is a solution based on tracking your head pose using infrared, and it requires a sort of a headset, and I didn't want that because it was too expensive, and I really don't want to sit here with a contraption strapped to my head. Although it's fine if you do, but I wanted to go for a cheaper solution, so I found FaceTrackNoIR because it does head pose tracking with a webcam and face recognition. Now, granted, that is not the best way of tracking your head pose, but it is the cheapest. There are other alternatives. There is ED Tracker, which does the same, but with tiny gyroscopes. The ones that are used, for instance, in Wiimotes, which is a very good solution. All of these solutions do the same. They track your head pose and allow you to translate and send that data to the game. And the game then uses that as controller input. Now, looking at FaceTrackNoIR, I'm not going to show you how to download or where to download. There are many videos that cover that. I'm not going to tell you how to install it. I'm just going to assume that you have a working webcam. If your webcam doesn't work in FaceTrackNoIR, or it doesn't work in your operating system, then you have a problem that I can't solve. What I did is I went to the website of FaceTrackNoIR and looked up the cameras that were supported, and mine, I just went out and bought one on the list, which is a Microsoft LifeCam HD 3000, and it works. It's a 30 FPS camera. I know that there are cameras out there that do 60 FPS and maybe even higher. There are different resolutions. Mine, I think the LifeCam is 1280. It seems to do the job. Anyway, I'm going to assume that you have a working webcam and a working game. I'm working with Elite Dangerous. FaceTrackNoIR needs a comma separated values file, a CSV file, that before it can recognize the game. So I'm playing Elite Dangerous. It's not started up now. But if it is, it'll, where my mouse is here, it'll show the name of the game. So you need to have that working. Now, when you look at the screen, this is almost the way that FaceTrackNoIR boots up. You have a little section here that lets you save your current profile. It saves all your settings, which is very nice, so you don't have to reset the values every time. I have a settings file here. Some people allow you to have their settings files. I don't see the point in that because I think everybody's preferences are different. and I'm going to show you how to make your own settings. That is, I think, much better than copying someone else's and having to edit those. Because if you follow these steps, you'll understand how it works. And it's not that difficult, but there's some things you need to know. All the information I have, I got off the internet, so I'm a fan just like you guys out there. And I'm just gonna explain what I know. What FaceTrackNoIR does is it receives head pose data, which is basically just a string of numbers. It can do that from different sources. Now, I'm using Face API because that is the data that comes from my webcam driver. There are other possibilities. The inertial head tracker kind is the one that uses the gyroscope data. Point tracker are the ones that use different points, like reflectors that are attached to your head. Then there's FaceTrackNoIR UDP, which is a solution where the actual processing that FaceTrackNoIR does can be done on a different computer. So to the local FaceTrackNoIR installation, the tracker source is a FaceTrackNoIR server. UDP is a kind of TCP protocol where the order of the packets, the data packets, doesn't really matter. If you lose one, the protocol just continues. I'm using Face API because I'm using the Face Tracker. Now you can actually use a second tracker source. So you could basically have multiple ways of measuring your head pose. And I can only assume that you assign different axes of movement, like pitch and yaw to one source and roll and XYZ to another. I don't know. But FaceTrackNoIR allows you different sources, which I believe is also a way of getting ready for the future. This is for future compatibility. You can go into settings. What is important to note is that I have selected pitch and yaw only, because I only want the program to track my head going tilting up and down and left and right. XYZ movement is physically moving my head up and down, or physically moving it left and right, or towards or back from the camera. Roll is, rolling your head. I've turned that off as well because that's what everybody appears to do, and pitch and yaw is the only thing that I really need in the games. Basically also the only thing that I use within the game when I use my flight stick. So pitch and yaw are selected. The camera button, I don't really know what it does. When I click it, nothing happens, but this is important. The engine state is now terminated, so the program isn't tracking anything. Okay. Next is the filter. Now, when you generate head pose data, it tends to generate a lot of erratic data as well. If you would plot that data, then you would get a lot of peaks basically, and you want to filter those peaks out. There are different kinds of filters. There was first only the EWMA filter. The Excella filter has been added as well. So all this does basically is to filter your input. If you have especially jittery movement, then it's possible that this filter might be able to help you. Now, I have read that for this filter to work properly, the global smoothing settings should be 1. Oh, turn back to 6. 1. Now if I go into settings, I will talk about the curves later, but as you can see here, there are always two tabs, one for the rotational characteristics, which is pitch, yaw, and roll, and one for the translation, which is left, right, up, down, and the z-axis. Now we're only concentrating on this one. As you can see, any input of 1 will be translated to an output of 6. And I can imagine that if you cancel out of this, if you increase this value, then it's going to affect the input, which is going to make the output of the filter unusable or something. I can set it to 1 and see what happens. Now also, if I go over here, when you send your input to the game, you usually use a joystick, and in order to go up, you pull the joystick back towards you. Now, when you're controlling pitch with your head, that information has to be inverted. So you can tell FaceTrackNoIR to do that for you. You can probably also do that in the game, so you have to choose either. But these tick boxes will allow you to invert an axis when you feel that that is necessary in the game. Then on to the next block here, the game protocol. So far we've been talking about collecting head pose data, filtering it. We're going to go into translating it, but we have to send it to the game as well. Now, sending the data to the game depends on, the method of sending depends on which game you use. You can tell by the list here that there are several options. I won't go into all of them, but you can see Flight Gear and Flight Simulator, FSX here, VJoy Virtual Joystick. There's even FaceTrackNoIR. This implies that there are games that understand the native FaceTrackNoIR protocol. I don't know if such games exist. I'm going to use FreeTrack. FreeTrack is the open source alternative to TrackIR. TrackIR being the well-known IR tracking solution. And when I click on the settings for this, I get this window. Now, some of the older games use a DLL called TIR Views. You will have to enable it. I don't think I have that DLL. I don't have any games, so this checkbox is disabled for me. But some of the older games use this way of receiving head pose data. Many games use the TrackIR solution and look for a TrackIR executable to be present. Now, I don't have TrackIR, so FaceTrackNoIR starts a dummy executable just to let the program know, hey, we're talking TrackIR protocol. And this is the way for Elite Dangerous, in my case, to know that we're doing head tracking. I've heard some people say that I have everything set up, but for some reason Elite Dangerous isn't picking up the fact that I'm using it. That may just be because your engine is disabled. I'll go into that later. Any other reason, I don't know. It may be something to do with this TrackIR not being found. Maybe you have to run FreeTrackNoIR as administrator for that to happen. I don't know. Then you can select an interface. You can select the way that FaceTrackNoIR speaks to the game. You can choose between the FreeTrack protocol or the TrackIR protocol. You can either enable both or either one of them. I use this one because I know Elite Dangerous supports TrackIR, so I say use TrackIR and hide the FreeTrack protocol. I haven't tried what happens when you turn on both, by the way. In some cases, your game will require a specific DLL to run. You may have to download FaceTrackNoIR and pull out the specific DLL that you need, and you can tell FaceTrackNoIR by clicking this button to where that DLL actually is. So now on to the important stuff, into curves. Now what you can see here is translations for yaw, for pitch, and for roll. Now we're not using roll, we're just using yaw and pitch, so I'm only looking at these, but the principle of setting up these curves is the same. Basically this says how to translate your input degree, so this means how far you turn your head, to how that translates into the game. Now what you can see here is that when I turn my head 20 degrees, either left or right, it translates to a turn in the game to 90 degrees. So that is not linear. Linear would be 50 to 50. That would be this. Remove that. That would be this. But that would mean that I couldn't turn my head inside the game to more than 50 degrees. If I turn my face more than 50 degrees in real life, which is this axis here, I wouldn't be able to look at my screen anymore, comfortably anyway. So I want to limit the way, the number of degrees I turn my head and maximize the use of that in the game. So basically I want to turn my head no more than 20 degrees to the right. So I put a little dot here, and I want that to translate to looking 90 degrees to the side. Oh, I have to drag this one. 20 becomes 90. That's this one. Now, as you can see, that translation does not go in a straight line. There's already a little kind of a curve going on there. When you install this software for the first time, you'll start off with 3 of these dots, and dragging this dot will influence the way this curve looks, as you can, and you can feel what the effect of that is in the game very easily. Now, if I added a little dot here and I dragged that to the bottom, this would mean that the first 5 degrees of my head turn would result in no output, which basically creates a dead zone. That may be something that you want. I experimented with different settings. I thought it was very nervous in that way, so I decided just to remove that one and go with a direct link between my head movements and the movement in the game, and that works for me. So that's setting up yaw. I just have 2 points, very simple. 0 is 0, and 20 degrees turns into 90 degrees. Now if I go to pitch, you'll see that there are 2 graphs here. One is for pitch up, one is for pitch down. Now the makers of FaceTrackNoIR have said, well, we don't think it's logical that if you when you look down, you're going to look into your seat. So 90 degrees is as far as you're going to look in the game. If you want to look further, you're going to look through your seat, and that is why they've said no, 90 is the max. Now in some games, you want to be able to look up further than 90 degrees, so they've left you the freedom to go to 180 degrees. In Elite Dangerous, however, looking up farther than 90 degrees is going to cause you to look left and right as well. So I've limited this to 90 degrees, so I cannot look up farther than 90 degrees in the game. Just to go back to the yaw, in some games it is possible to look physically behind you. If you have an open canopy in your airplane in Flight Simulator, you want to be able to look farther than 90 degrees, so you can just move this up. But you have to keep in mind that the game may not understand what you mean by these inputs. If your game is programmed to go no further than 140, and you input 180, something's going to happen, but you don't know what. So this is logical for Elite Dangerous as far as I know. So these are the settings that I'm working with. So I'm going to click OK. Now there's another important option that may seem unimportant, but that's the short keys. The shortcuts basically. Centering your face. When you look straight at your screen, that's like your starting position. That is your center position. Sometimes it happens that you start up the FaceTrackNoIR and it catches your first head pose a little bit to the left. Then when you center your head, you'll be looking to the right in the game. So you can center that, but you have to use a key. And you have to use a key that is not used in the game. So in my setup of Elite Dangerous, delete wasn't being used. So I used delete to recenter my my head pose. You can do that for in-game as well. I've not seen the use for this yet, but I'm sure it's useful for something. And I want to be able to start and stop the actual head tracking. I've used the equal sign. So if I press the equals key, then my head tracking stops and it just goes back to default. There are other settings here. When you stop the engine, what happens? Do you go back to 0 or do you stay in the position that you were looking? I've chosen to go back to the 0 position. You can also say, do I want to stop the engine, or do I want to keep tracking? Now, there's a choice to be made here. Stop engine is default. If you say keep tracking, the FaceTrackNoIR program doesn't stop. It just keeps tracking, which costs CPU cycles. But when you start back up, it doesn't take any time. So if you say stop engine, it frees up your CPU because it can stop tracking. But when you start back up, it's going to take some time before it's back up. So this is the choice to be made there. There's an axis inhibitor that I can assign to a key as well. So it can basically tell the game, well, stop inhibiting or start inhibiting the following rotations or translations. I don't use that, so I leave them off. So I press OK. Now I'm gonna start the program, and it'll tell. That's my face. As you can see, this is my face. It's pretty dark in here, so it's having trouble recognizing my eyes. I'm gonna stop and turn on the light. And I'm gonna start again and let it recognize my face properly. So this looks better. It looks better, but that is what happens. You can see that it's completely thrown off the way it is translating. So this would mean in the game I'm looking to the left or to the right and up, but I'm looking straight at the screen. So what do? I press my delete, and you'll see that this image has gone straight. It matches my real face position. So when I look left and I look right, see, it follows exactly what I do, and it feels very natural as well. It doesn't feel like there's any dead zoning or any other. So that's what it looks like. I can stop the tracking. There it goes. See, stop tracking. No engine. Start it back up. It takes a little time, but there it is. Now let's have a look at what that does in the game. Okay, well, here we are in the game, and as you can see, I can just look around. There's no very strong snapping to the center. I'm not going to worry about the canisters here. This is the target practice. You can see that there's a little bit of movement. When I try to keep my head still, it's not very well possible. So I may actually have have to do some kind of dead zoning. Let's just yeah, the canisters. See, but as you can see in flight, as I move my head, it doesn't really affect my when I'm in a dogfight. I'm gonna be happy with this, I think. Put some more to the engines here. The actual movement feels very natural, basically. That's because I haven't done very much to the translations at all, and it works very well. I'm very happy with this setting. Now I'll show you what happens. I'm gonna press the equals key, bang, it's off. Now there's no head tracking. This is just the I'm looking up now, but nothing's happening, so I really have to roll my ship here. Turn it back on, and we're back. Now, I turned it back on, okay, and it's still, you saw a little bit of lag there. That's because the engine had to start back up. So basically, guys, it's a free solution, and if you tweak with the settings a little bit, it works very well. So I'll see you guys in space. Whip around this asteroid here. See ya. Thanks for watching.